All right, so here is, again, if you've seen any of my talks, you'll have seen this image. But today, where I'd like to start from is just a sort of a very general overview of the cerebrospinal fluid. We've done this before, so going back to any of the previous lectures or lessons that we've done, or there's numerous YouTube videos where I'm presenting this information outside of the Emerging Sciences Foundation. But essentially, that the pink here is our brain and central nervous system. Inside, in the middle of our brain and central nervous system and spine, here are these ventricles. These ventricles are these fluid-filled bodies that hold the cerebrospinal fluid. Going down the middle of your spinal cord is a hollow canal that also has cerebrospinal fluid located in it. Okay, so imagine, and then on the outside is also cerebrospinal fluid, and the cerebrospinal fluid goes all the way down to your sacrum. Okay, now this is our brain and spinal cord, and it's essentially floating. It's totally encased in this fluid. All right, and that this fluid is 99% water. So here's our brain and spinal cord in this fluid that's 99% water. And what I stated prior was this fluid may be an intermediary between the infinite and the finite. Sort of it's the first condensation of a less condensed energy form, similar to vapor condensing and forming water. Right? You might not see the vapor, but if you collected all the vapor and sort of put it together, you're going to get water droplets. Right? So imagine a less condensed energy form that is you prior to the condensation, that is also you. All right? That the first step down into the physical body is through the medium of this liquid, which is 99% water. Now, using all the techniques that we've learned, whether it's through our breath, tuning forks, sound, humming, our language, the music that we're listening to, everything that is around us that affects the fluid, right? You can put a little bowl of fluid in front of you and play music at it and see it resonate. You can blow on it and see the waves form. Okay, by breathing, by having a synchronized heart rate, by having a heart rate that has increased heart rate variability, that in this fluid, using our breath, we can actually create a rhythm, an undulating process, an oscillatory pattern that creates a resonance in this fluid. That through the resonance in the fluid, then we can actually inform the fluid and help transfer energy through the resonance of the fluid. Okay. Last time we talked about Dr. Pollock and the fourth phase of water. Essentially, all right, what happens is that under certain circumstances, and we're really trying to figure out what those circumstances are, that water forms this exclusion zone. It's called an EZ zone. It's an exclusion zone. So if this is water here, all right, next to a hydrophilic surface. So hydrophilic means water-loving surface. That under certain circumstances, you get this exclusion zone, and it's called the exclusion zone because in this area, you get a lot of negatively charged particles, and in this area, you get a lot of positively charged particles. Right? And it's called the exclusion zone because here, this area excludes large particles. So you're not going to find any large particles. And they think that there might be some form of structuring of the water that is occurring here, almost like a lattice that is forming. Right? The hydrophilic surface is important for water loving. And what's interesting is that the outside of our cells they're all hydrophilic. So the cell membrane, the part of the cell membrane that would be making contact with the water is hydrophilic. Whenever you get a change, whenever you get a polarity here, all right, this is this is chemistry. Whenever you get a polarity, essentially you can then, with the movement, as you get ions moving, all right, that then generates a current, an electrical current, right? So essentially, this is what this is chemical energy from the fourth phase of water that's being formed under certain circumstances being converted into electrical energy, right? And that's why they have this water battery here, right? If this is true, then we can get a lot of energy from water itself. And from the human body perspective, then this would be a lot of energy coming from the cerebrospinal fluid, being 99% water, that you can get physiochemical energy, optical energy, electrical energy, mechanical energy, radiant energy, right? You might feel hot, right? You might actually feel as if people speak as if rays are coming out of me, feeling a lot of electricity, all right? And if you were to put electrodes into this area, that you could light up a light bulb. You could light up a light bulb because this chemical energy is being transmitted into electrical energy. And with the flow of electrons, essentially, we can then generate energy and light a light bulb. Well, when I see this, right, what I think to myself is, well, what if the circuit is actually our body, right? And the words that we have used over and over again, like enlightenment, illuminated, right? With the pictures that we see, for instance, of the third eye, that's bright, right? Why would it be shining a light? Where does this energy come from? Right? Could it actually come from this fourth phase of water within the cerebrospinal fluid that under certain circumstances becomes a fourth phase? Then the water is actually able to become an energy source, a battery internally, and the circuit is our body, and then we illuminate. We literally illuminate. Okay. So that's essentially where we go. Okay. That's just that as a hypothesis is very powerful. Okay. And now I think as we see messages of this coming across, there's messages of this that are starting to come across. I think it's time that we all pay attention to it. I mentioned in the past, when I've spoken about this in the past, people have even mentioned like Pixar or Disney movies that are incorporating water as having memory, um, water as having historical memory that is able to inform. Somebody actually posted on my website on, after they saw my presentation on the cerebrospinal fluid, how Frozen 2 had a completely different take for them, and it's on my website holding space. It's quite beautiful. But if we sort of look at the water, start paying attention to the water, not only the water that we're drinking, the water that we're consuming, the water that we're bathing in, but also our internal waters, our internal fluids. Okay. And just starting to have a relationship with our internal fluids. And the important part that I really want to stress is that there's no like space that holds the cerebrospinal fluid, let's say, even though we talk about it as, it's enclosed in the ventricles, right? What we're learning more and more is that when we sleep, when we might be in parasympathetic states, that the ventricles open up, that the fluid is flowing through the brain tissue itself. And so when we talk about this fluid as being the cerebrospinal fluid and being housed in these areas, yes, that's the most, let's say, the most water-like or the least dense of this fluid, because it's contained. And if you wanted to go look for it, you could actually put a catheter in there and pull it out and actually get clear fluid. Okay. But the information from this fluid is really everywhere in our body, because as it goes from the cerebrospinal fluid, it goes then into the brain tissue itself. It gets resorbed into our blood system. It then gets distributed throughout our bodies into the different organs and feet and hands, and then it gets repicked up by the lymphs, and it gets brought back to the heart, and then distributed again. And then some of it we filter out and we pee it out, and then we drink more, right? So just think about the quality of the water that you are bathing yourself in, that you are ingesting, and in these meditations, see if you can start having a relationship with not only the cerebrospinal fluid in all of its anatomic parts, but then diving down from the cerebrospinal fluid into the water molecule that makes up 99% of the cerebrospinal fluid. And then see if you can go even further, right? Water molecule, maybe you want to have a relationship with the hydrogen or the oxygen. Right? And going back and saying, wow, what were some of the first atoms? Well, hydrogen, helium, it's the anatomic table. It's the most basic ones. And from that, all of everything that we know exists has been created. Okay, so if, let's just say, if there's a resonance in a hydrogen atom that holds some sort of memory, that has the ability to hold memory, that has the ability to hold knowledge, and that this is now the hydrogen atom that occurred, that was present gazillion years ago, that now you are ingesting into your body. Your body's taking it up and saying, oh, thank you for taking it up. Now let's go and disperse throughout your whole body. Okay. All right. So I hope that makes any sense. I hear some spiritual teachers say that the central channel Sushumna runs in front of the spine. Your hypothesis is it is in the spine. In the spine. Energetically, it's everywhere, right? Because as a current flows, right? If you have a meter outside of a wire, you're going to feel the energy being dispersed from there. Okay. And to me, I'm sort of more on the what Dr. Deep is talking about, of that if there's these 72,000 nadis that are currents channels, that there is a water molecule in these that is transmitting the energy, that is transmitting the information. From an anatomic perspective, where would the most pure water actually be? It's in the middle of that. It's in the middle of your spinal cord, in the hollow canal.